it's a contemporary map. It's valuable for here as well as the rest of our trip, because it's going to have, until we get to Lake St. Joe, it's the only guide you've got that's going to locate the plantation. Let's close it up a little bit. Marshal on bus 3. Pretend you're a DI and close them up a little better. The bus marshal on bus 3. Pretend you're a drill instructor, and your people are boots. And so close them up a little better. All right, basically we are at the Williams/Grant Canal. All right, when the President Lincoln knows about this, you write Butler about this. So this becomes priority with General Butler. Butler being a political general, he probably remembers a little better than some of the West Point generals who is the commander-in-chief. And Butler, when the troops come up the river with Farragut on the 28th of June, they're going to arrive here the 25th of June. They're going to land these men. The bad thing is where these men are from. Most of them are from New England. They have one regiment of Wisconsin troops and one regiment of people from Michigan. So that means these men are probably going to be the less used to a hot, humid climate than any people in the Union Army. So they're going to be commanded by General Williams, who you can see is a rather attractive gentleman, and that's the picture there. In the picture in the plaque. The plaque, I believe, is over there.
Yeah, the first one's there.
The first one. And Williams is going to have his men round up a large number of blocks. And they're going to lay out an alignment of a canal leading from the Mississippi. Remember, this is the Mississippi's course then. This is the Mississippi's course now, since the crevasse of 1876. So the canal is going to run from this point to this point. Now remember, the hairpin band goes all the way up here. So Williams is going to put his soldiers and his blacks to work digging a canal. This is going to be pick and shovel labor. It's supposed to be 50 feet wide and 6 feet deep, and will extend from this point here to this point there. Williams's people will work on it, but the river is falling rapidly. It'll fall as much as someone said at one time, it falls 5.5 feet at Memphis. On a falling river, you're not going to be able to even keep up with it. Also, Farragut is worried about his ships, the ocean-going ships being trapped up the river. So, at the end of the third week in July, Williams's men board their transports, and they will leave here when Farragut and his fleet goes downriver. The Confederates will launch a counteroffensive, and Williams will be killed at the Battle of Baton Rouge on the 5th day of August, when the Confederates try to capture Baton Rouge. But now the Confederates are in possession of this area. Now when Grant comes downriver, Grant is a little smarter than McClellan. He knows who the commander-in-chief is. He knows the commander-in-chief is interested in this, and he decides to resume work on the canal. Now, what he comes down here for, Grant has found out from Washington, from Halleck, and the War Department, if he comes down and takes personal command here, he will supersede McClellan. McClellan will simply become a unit in Grant's army, not commanding an independent force. So Grant will be down here on the 30th of January, and he'll reorganize the army. What has been McClellan's army organized into the 13th and 15th Corps. McClernand will be commander of the 13th Corps, and relieving George W. Morgan, who goes back very disgruntled to Ohio, and Sherman takes over the 15th Corps. Now their mission, most of Sherman's men are going to camp in the Young's Point area. That's in the area of Tuscumbia Bend. Most of McClernand's troops are going to camp up at Milliken's Bend. Now Sherman's mission is, going occasionally from McClernand, is draft a large working party, get some blacks, and put them to work on the canal, the Williams Canal. They'll make several adjustments. They're going to make a particular adjustment in the upstream entrance to the canal. They have decided that the current of the Mississippi is not helping the canal diggers. It's counterproductive, the current. So they're going to relocate the entrance to the canal and resume their work. And it's going to be rather interesting work. Particularly, the river is doing the opposite. It is rising rapidly, and it's going to crevasse in this area and in this area, flooding much of the countryside. Now it's going to get worse on the 7th day of March, because a large crevasse is going to take place. But by that time, they've put this pick and shovel labor. They're going to bring down 4 large floating bridges. They're going to bring down a number of steam pumps, and they're going to do hard work. But on the night of the 7th, there's a massive crevasse in the levee. The water pours through, causing the area the water to rise rapidly, and you're better flee to take shelter on the levees, or you're going to find yourself a casualty. So the canal has temporarily been stopped. The Confederates, meanwhile, have begun to move their cannons from the Vicksburg waterfront down to position opposite the canal, because in case the canal is completed, they can deliver fire along the axis of the canal. But along toward the end of March, after Fayers and his other bayou, after his Yazoo Pass expedition is in deep doo-doo, when the Lake Providence route in deep doo-doo, and Steele's bayou expedition barely extracted, Grant will lose interest in this canal, because now he's going to focus on another alternative. As he will say when he writes later, he's going to be always much smarter in retrospect than you were originally, that he's been thinking about this all the time when he's going to decide. He's going to decide to move his army down the west side of the Mississippi and cross the area somewhere in the area of New Carthage. And with this decision, which will be, he will start General McClernand out on the 30th day of March. Now, McClernand is the only one in favor of this idea. Sherman says we ought to go back to Memphis and resume our advance overland. And it failed in the winter, in the December 1862, or we can attack across the river, but that will be a Fredericksburg or worse. So since McClernand is the only one who supports it, Grant will tell McClernand, you send Colonel Bennett with this, and we'll follow him down with the 60th Indiana, 2 guns and some cavalry. You're going to leave Milliken's Bend, and you're going to investigate this route here and see if it's practical to move an army south. And work on this canal will be abandoned. But he will institute further operation. They've got this equipment, so he's going to try to cut a canal from Duckport Landing 5 miles through the roundaway by Walnut Bayou. And they're going to send barges through there, tugs through there, and use to supply the movement south by water. But after sending the tug Victor and a half a dozen barges through there, the water is going to fall faster than they can dig, even with floating dredges. The floating dredges are going to be trapped in the failed canal, and the Duckport Canal has failed. So you can say Grant has failed at the Grant's Canal. He's failed at the Duckport Canal. He's failed at Lake Providence. He's failed at Yazoo Pass, and he's failed at Steele's Bayou. All right, now the Bayou expeditions very briefly are the Yazoo Pass expedition. He'll send his protege, Harry Wilson. Now, Harry Wilson, he is a rather nasty fellow. He's a Grant protege. I imagine if Grant hadn't turned sharply, Harry would get a broken nose. Because anyone that handles the cavalry the way he handles his cavalry at the beginning and wilderness is lots of things fire. So what does he do? He sends Harry up here. Harry likes what he sees, and they blow the levee on the 3rd of February. Up until 1856, if you lived in Yazoo City, you want to go to steamboat out to Memphis, you would go this way. So they blow the levee. The water pours through. They cannot send any gunboats or transports through there until the 22nd. And they're going to stand in Moon Lake, and they're not going to reach the cold water until the end of February. Meanwhile, the Confederates have rushed a force, commanded by, eventually by General Loring, to Fort Pemberton, and they're going to stop this expedition. Now, while this expedition is being stopped there, Grant reads the Vicksburg newspapers, and they're crowing that they got the Yankees there. They're going to capture Ross's division. They're going to capture Watson Smith, who Wilson is calling Admiral Nelson for this time, trap them here. So Grant, to extract them, will follow Porter's advice, and in the period beginning on the 16th of March, they're going to send Porter with most of the ironclads up Steele's Bayou. They'll try to get through Black Bayou, get up here to Wellington, come down the Big Sunflower River, be back to Vicksburg, and then go up to Reading, Fort Pemberton. But the Confederates, Samuel Wang Ferguson, almost stops them, almost traps the Federal fleet. They can't go backwards and forwards. Giles Smith will make a night march, rescue the gunboats there, or they would leave their gunboats stranded at Steele's Bayou. Meanwhile, McPherson has blown the levee here at Lake Providence, trying to open up a route by way of Lake Providence, Baxter Bayou, Bayou Mason, Tensaw River, to Trinity, Black River, and into the Red River. But it takes almost 2 weeks to get messengers through. This expedition, this thing, is a madness. So we got failure here at Grant's Canal, failure here at Yazoo Pass, failure here at Lake Providence, and then he's going off on this final one the way that we're going to follow. It's a long, about 2.25 mile an hour. Well, now this is it's probably apocryphal, but it's well told that there are going to be complaints on Grant. Grant is bogged down in swamps in Mississippi and Louisiana. He's at least keeping his men busy, and this is reportedly is one of these times that Grant says, "I'll buy what brand of whiskey's drinking, I'll buy it for some of my other ship." So he's getting into a position where he's going to have to do something. Any other? We'll take the other questions after Terry and Parker has spoken.
Just to give you a brief history on this area, this is the remaining vestige of the William Grant Canal. Now, when the park was established by the Congress in 1899, it was specifically to commemorate the campaign, siege, and defense of Vicksburg. Now, as the War Department had established the dates of that campaign as being March the 29th to the July 4th, 1863, this canal, although it was still extant at that point in time, was not included within the boundaries of the park because work on this canal stopped prior to March the 29th. But the canal is an integral part of the Vicksburg story, not only in 1862, but again in 1863. Thus, several years ago, around 1988, we launched an initiative to try to identify who the owner of this property was and see if they were interested and willing to donate the property to the federal government. Although this is only a 2.56 acre tract, there were 3 owners. Thankfully, all 3 owners were agreeable to donating their part to the federal government. But as the Vicksburg campaign did not officially begin until March the 29th of 1863, and work on this canal stopped around March the 26th, March the 27th, we had no authorization to accept the generous donation. And so we worked with the congressional delegations in Mississippi and Louisiana to introduce the necessary legislation amending the boundaries of Vicksburg National Military Park. That legislation was passed in the waning days of Bush the first administration, and so we, the American people, are now the proud owners of a ditch in Louisiana. But in authorizing the acceptance of this donation, the park finally received an interpretive mandate, which was not in our enabling act. Under the Grants Canal legislation passed in 1990, the park is now to interpret the Vicksburg campaigns, plural, beginning in April 1862 through July 4, 1863, as well as the history of Vicksburg under Union occupation through Reconstruction. So rather than just this narrow 98-day window, we now have an interpretive mandate to interpret almost 20 years of American history. Now, under the Parks Enabling Act, any state that had troops involved in the Vicksburg campaign of 1863 is authorized to enter upon the grounds of the national park for the purpose of ascertaining and marking the troops of the lines of its troops engaged therein. 28 states had troops in the Vicksburg campaign of 1863. All 28 of those states have erected memorials on the grounds of the national park. The first being the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in 1903. The last being the Commonwealth of Kentucky in 2001. But thanks to that Grants Canal legislation, which now authorizes us to interpret the Vicksburg campaign beginning in April of 1862, it tacitly gives approval for 2 more states to erect memorials, those being Connecticut and Vermont. And just this past week, I had communications with Governor Jody Rell of Connecticut, who is going to soon issue an executive proclamation identifying a group to represent the state of Connecticut and charge them with erecting a monument in Vicksburg National Military Park. When that monument is finally erected, it will go over here at Grants Canal, or I should say at Williams's Canal, since Connecticut troops helped excavate this canal in the summer of 1862. Water.
It depends on how cold it is.
He's going to need the assistance of the Navy.
Thank you.
Now, you recall that early in the war, this inland water fleet was under the command of the Army. It was under the command of the Army. This involved naval officers to no end. But finally, Secretary of the Navy Gideon Wells was successful in getting President Abraham Lincoln to move the inland water fleet out from under Army control and placing it under Navy control in October of 1862. As a result, generals such as Grant could no longer order admirals around. They could only request assistance, and the admirals would be within their own right to say, no, we're not going to do that. Fortunately for the country, Grant and Porter were cut very much from the same material. And so when Grant first approached Porter with the idea of running by the batteries of Vicksburg, something deemed impossible by many, the admiral was shocked at the mere suggestion. He was taken aback. But he realized Grant was serious, and he told Grant, think very long and hard about this, General. But if that's what you want me to do, I'll make the attempt. Bear in mind that once my fleet is below the batteries of Vicksburg, should it be successful in getting there in the first place, it will not come back upstream until Vicksburg had fallen. As Parker mentioned, going downriver, these vessels can make between 6 and 10 knots. Coming upstream against that powerful current, they can only make 2 knots. As a result, they'd be under Confederate shell fire for a prolonged period of time, and it was believed that not even the powerful ironclads could withstand the shelling that would be hurled against them. So he tells Grant, think long and hard about this. And so Grant would. It'd take a few days. He would once again, accompanied by Porter, ascend the Yazoo River, take a look at the Confederate northern flank where the Battle of Chickasaw Bayou had been fought. And he finally determines the only means of getting to Vicksburg will be from the south and east. He tells Porter, I need you to run by the batteries. So with Porter's consent and approval, Grant issues his orders to his corps commanders to begin the march south through Louisiana. That march begins on the 31st day of March, 1863. Base camp at Milliken's Bend, Young's Point are off to your right. It is from that area that this movement south through Louisiana will commence, moving from your right to left across the front of the bus. And we'll be following much of that route here this afternoon. As the Union Army is slogging its way south through Louisiana, investigating this road, the 13th Army Corps is in the lead, led by General John McClernand. McClernand is sending back very positive news to Grant of the condition of the road, stating that with work, with effort, it can support the movement of the Army, its wagons, and its trains. As a result, Grant would commit himself to the movement south through Louisiana, and on the night of April the 16th, Porter would run by the batteries of Vicksburg. Once that passage of the batteries is done, there is no turning back. There is no turning back. Grant is now committed to the movement, and it will be made. And so we'll talk about the movement down the west side of the river as we follow along the route of Grant's army. Again, bear in mind that his army corps, there were 3 in number at this point. The 13th Corps under John McClernand, the 15th Corps under William Sherman, the 17th Corps under James McPherson. While we have the opportunity here, let's talk briefly about these 3 men, if we may. The 13th Corps is under the command of its gruff commander, John McClernand. Recall, he is a former Democratic member of the Congress from Illinois, and so he's a politician turned general officer. And he has proven himself to be a very capable and very brave individual at Belmont, Henry and Donelson, Shiloh, and at Arkansas Post. Although he is Grant's least favorite Corps commander, this man has demonstrated that he can and will fight, and he fights very well. The 15th Army Corps is under Grant's most trusted support, and say most of the 13th United States Infantry. We'll see the 13th U.S. side. We saw them at Chickasaw Bayou. We'll see them again at Vicksburg on May the 19th, where this unit wins everlasting renown. The unit would be known as Sherman's Own. During the course of the Civil War, this unit, the 13th Infantry, would provide 2 full generals to the Army of the United States, Sherman and Sheridan. Well, Sherman is in command of the 15th Army Corps here at Vicksburg. He has fought with Grant at Shiloh. He's been involved with Grant ever since that date, and the 2 men have formed a very close personal friendship. As Grant's most trusted subordinate officer, Grant charges Sherman with trying to help screen this movement south through Louisiana. As the 13th Corps takes up its line of march and heads south, it will be followed by McPherson's Corps simply to deceive the Now, McPherson is a native of Ohio. He's a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy class of 1854, first in his class. So he is a highly skilled and a well-trained engineer. He serves as an engineering officer throughout the pre-war days in the Army. He even does a stint as an instructor at West Point. At the outbreak of the Civil War, McPherson is out on the West Coast. He's brought back to the East. He will be attached to the Army of the Tennessee as late as the Battle of Shiloh, April 1862. Less than a year prior to the time we're now discussing, he's still a lieutenant. Still a lieutenant of engineers. In a 14-month period, this man will go from a first lieutenant of engineers, be transferred to a line capacity and elevated through the ranks to Major General in just 14 months. Now, this meteoric rise, I'm not saying it wasn't warranted, but I simply say that he rose so rapidly through the ranks that he did not quite develop the skills and leadership ability warranted of a man with 2 stars on his shoulders. And I think here, as active operations commence, Grant suddenly realizes that the person is very inexperienced. As a result, I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that throughout this campaign, Grant is going to work to shield McPherson, make sure that he is out of harm's way at all times because he is an unknown quantity. Thus, it will be McClernand who has the most important, arguably, the most important assignment of this campaign, leading the Army's van south through Louisiana. Those interior waterways, forming a water barrier on his right flank, thus protecting his troops as they march south through Louisiana. Due to the flooded nature of the countryside farther inland, any Confederate troops then operating in the Trans-Mississippi could not penetrate that water barrier. So the only thing opposing Grant here in Louisiana on this march is a battalion of Louisiana Cavalry, after those Confederates remove this nuisance, more importantly, remove the eyes and ears of the Confederate Army in Louisiana. They are unsuccessful. The Confederate cavalrymen hightail it out of there and fall back to Somerset Plantation in our front, yet continued to harass and report on Grant's movements. Here the bio is once again. Somebody asked me what a bio is. Here you get a good view of one. It is a slow, sluggish stream just choked by vine, cane, and cypress trees and other growth. These bios are just full of alligators, cottonmouth moccasins, copperheads, and other snakes. But they are picturesque in the extreme. So as Grant's army is pushing down here, the Confederate cavalrymen are trying to maintain contact with the fence. Eventually, they will send back word to Confederate forces at Grand Gulf that there is one, possibly two, Army Corps en route south through Louisiana. This is startling intelligence. That news is received by Confederate General John Bowen at his command post down at Grand Gulf. He will send back reports to Pemberton, the departmental commander in Jackson, but most of these reports fall on deaf ears. Bowen, however, is not one to take chances. From his command post at Grand Gulf, he will send over 2 regiments of Missouri infantrymen under the command of Colonel Frank Cockrell. He will tell Cockrell, cross over the river, march north, make contact with the enemy, find out where they are, what roads they're moving along, ascertain how many men they have, how many guns they have, discern, if you can, what is their objective. Now, Cockrell will cross the Mississippi River, land at Hard Times Landing, move north and make contact with the Federals in the vicinity of Somerset Plantation and also Dunbar's Plantation. And it will be the fiery, aggressive Frank Cockrell, who, as Ed will tell you, is the finest combat officer in either army here at Vicksburg. He will send back frequent and very accurate reports to John Bowen as to the Federal movements in Louisiana. And it doesn't take Bowen long before he determines this is the invasion of Mississippi unfolding. And he will try to warn his superior, John Pemberton, in Jackson. But again, as I mentioned, these reports almost fall on deaf ears. And why is that? Well, Pemberton is a departmental commander. As a lieutenant general, the equivalent of a 3-star rank, he is a departmental officer. He's in command of the Department of Mississippi and East Louisiana, responsible for the defense of both Vicksburg and Port Hudson, the 2 remaining Confederate bastions on the Mississippi. His headquarters are in the capital city of Jackson, 40 miles east of Vicksburg. When he receives Bowen's dire warnings, he will immediately send a note to his subordinate in Vicksburg, who is Carter Stevenson, his senior ranking subordinate. What's the situation? Stevenson, with binoculars in hand, looks across the Mississippi River. He sees that the same places are being picketed day after day. He sees the campfires being lit at night, indicating the presence of a very large federal force. This, of course, is all part of that deceptionary move being coordinated by William Sherman. And it works beautifully. Stevenson will wire back to Pemberton these reports. There's no substance to them. The entire Union Army is still in my front. If there is any movement south into Louisiana, it's nothing but a feint. Now, if you're John Pemberton, far removed from the scene as he was in Jackson, and you have conflicting reports, one from your senior ranking subordinate, Carter Stevenson, and one from your junior ranking subordinate, John Bowen, who are you going to trust? Whose word are you going to take? In all probability, you'll take the senior ranking officer, which is what Pemberton does. He takes it for granted that Carter Stevenson is more experienced, knows what he's talking about, is better able to wade through the morass of activities and determine what's going on. As a result, Pemberton will do nothing in response to Bowen's urgent request. At the same time, this movement south through Louisiana is taking place by the infantry. Grant continues on with a series of diversionary cavalry raids, the whole purpose of which is to deceive his opponent, confuse him, knock him off balance. 5 cavalry raids will be launched from Tennessee into Mississippi and Alabama. In a brilliant display of interdepartmental cooperation, Grant and William Rosecrans are coordinating a series of cavalry raids. The most famous of these raids will be that led by Colonel Benjamin Grierson. Colonel Grierson, with about 1,200 cavalrymen, will leave LaGrange in Grand Junction, Tennessee around April 16th, April 17th, 1862. Their orders are to ride south through Mississippi, into Mississippi, and hopefully sever that vital rail line that connects Vicksburg with Jackson and via Jackson points elsewhere in the Confederacy, the Southern Railroad of Mississippi. This is Pemberton's line of supply. This is Pemberton's line of communications. This is Pemberton's lifeline. Now, all of you in this bus today, I'm sure, watched the news with great relish during the first Gulf War in the early 1990s. You may well recall a news conference held by then General Colin Powell over in Kuwait, in which a reporter actually had the audacity to ask him, "General, what's your plan?" Without giving any specifics, of course, Colin Powell responded, "We're going to cut him off and we're going to kill him. We're going to cut him off and we're going to kill him." That, my friends, is taken from Grant's playbook here at Vicksburg. It is a mirror image of the Vicksburg operations. What is Grant going to do? By Grierson's raid, he's going to cut him off by severing the line of supply and communications. He's going to kill him in Vicksburg. And so that's the purpose of this raid. As Grierson's troopers ride south into Mississippi, obviously they are being pursued by Confederate cavalry. Grierson will throw out one of his 3 regiments as a decoy, and the Confederates in pursuit will take the bait, and they'll follow the decoy unit around and back toward Tennessee. Thus, on April the 24th, Grierson's men managed to get astride the Southern Railroad of Mississippi near Newton Station, and there on the 24th, they will tear up railroad track, cut telegraph lines, burn railroad cars and locomotives, do as much damage as they can in a short period of time. Now, knowing that Confederate cavalry are closing in from north, east, and west, Grierson, rather than turning around and riding back to Tennessee, continues in a southwesterly direction, and on May the 1st of 1863 will reach safety behind Union lines in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It is referred to as the most brilliant expedition of the war, the most daring raid undertaken during the American Civil War. Not only does it have the desired effect of severing that rail line, cutting Pemberton's line of supply and communication, though only temporarily, but it has the added advantage, a benefit for the Federals, of forcing Pemberton to turn his back on the river. So as Grant is marching south through Louisiana, the true movement against the city, Pemberton turns his back on the Mississippi and is obsessed with bagging these raiders as they travel down
any cooperation has to be approved by Davis. Davis would have been much better off if he had given Pemberton jurisdiction, say, as far west as the Washita River, but he does not. So all the Confederates have in this area is Ike Harrison's Cavalry Battalion, about 300 men. And there's no way they can even stop Osterhaus with the 60th Illinois, his detachment of the 4th of Missouri, and his cannon. And they're going all the way here. Now the nearest force that Taylor has that can stop this march south, where is it? The nearest ones at all are the command, are the troops under General Walker. Walker's men are stationed at Pine Bluff, Arkansas, more than 180 miles away from here. It's a Texas division, Walker's Greyhounds. The only other troops in the area of any substantive numbers are down on the Bayou Teche, more than 180 miles from here. They are under Richard Taylor, and they are engaging Nathaniel Prentice Banks' men as Banks' men move up the Teche toward Franklin. So if there are going to be any troops coming over here and helping Colonel Harrison, they're going to have to come under Pemberton's department. And Pemberton is not about to detail a large number of people over here. He's got other problems on his mind. He has General Steele, who is going to be up in the Greenville area beginning on the 5th day of April. So he has other problems to work. So the only person in the area here that can take any action is John Stevens Bowen, who is a command at Grand Gulf. Now on the 4th, Bowen will requisition the steamboats, Paul Jones and Charm, and use them to shuttle 2 regiments of Cockrell's brigade, a battery of artillery, 4 guns across to the Louisiana side. So that means the Confederates have committed Ike Harrison's battalion, Cockrell's combat team, totaling about 1,100 men, to stop the advance of Bowen, stop McClernand's advance south. By the beginning of the 3rd week of April, McClernand's men are in this area. They run the Confederates out of New Carthage. How do they do it? They get a barge. They plank up the barge, mount a couple of mountain howitzers on it, manned by the 60th Indiana, and christen it the Opossum. So that's going to enable the Confederates of the Union to occupy New Carthage. Bowen, meanwhile, Cockrell, has taken position behind Mill Creek. We'll talk about that, and we're going to have Marvin Sanderman is changing his faith, and he's going to become a Methodist preacher. And he's going to get captured up there at Dunbar Plantation when we go by it. And he's going to practice racial equality like it should be by miscegenation. And they're going to put him out of bed with a rather elderly black lady. That's Sanderman in another life. We'll point it out when we pass Dunbar. That is when Cockrell tries to stop their advance. Because by this time, the Union forces have occupied Dunbar and this plantation. The next thing they're going to do, they've got these people here. Most of McClernand's men, are here. And they've alerted General McPherson to begin moving his men southward from Lake Providence by boat to move them into the staging areas that McClernand is moving out at Milliken's Bend. The key move is going to occur on the night of the 16th of April. general has pointed out, but Porter is sad. Porter covering his tail, because now it's fish or cut bait. As Grant goes to him and says it's ready to send your gunboats south past the Vicksburg batteries. Pemberton is in a dream world at this time. His headquarters are in Jackson, under orders from the War Department, since he believes the Yankees have been stymied. He's seen Steele's men move up the Mississippi River to Greenville. He's seen the Mississippi Marine Brigade go up the Mississippi River en route to the Tennessee River to support Grierson's movement, to support with two transports and a large number of barges past Vicksburg. They've been badly battered, but they'll soon be repaired. Now you can imagine Pemberton waking up that morning. He's going to have to tell, and you can imagine poor old Buford's people after that long train ride from Camp Moore, Louisiana, to Chattanooga. They've got to get their tail back here to Mississippi as fast as they can go, because Pemberton has now found out he has been deluded. Also, this means that Cockrell has to withdraw his men from Tensaw Parish, because with the Union gunboats on the river, he's going to have these men permanently isolated. So that's going to reduce the Confederate force on this river, on this side of the river, down to Ike Harrison. They're finally moving John G. Walker southward, but John G. Walker is going to be diverted to Camp T, Louisiana, over on the Red River, because Banks has advanced up the Teche, up to Vermilion, and his men are marching northward to Alexandria. So they forget about Taylor giving any help, forget about Walker giving any help, and the Union are now getting ready to move. Now, what are they going to do? The Union are concentrating at Somerset, Judge Perkins, and to New Carthage. That's McClernand's man. They have to open a new road, because they've decided there's not to be enough staging area here. they're going to stage out of hard time. So General Hovey is going out, and he's going to open a road along the east, on the west side of Bayou Vidal, the Douglas Plantation, then across. Then he's going to open a, then he is going to have a, the next thing they're going to do is open a road, reconnoiter, because there's already a road there, into the most fertile plantation area of Louisiana, except just above New Orleans. At least 20 huge plantations. Not these giant houses like at Oak Alley, but the plantation type. The number of slaves, 2,500 alone in this city. Wow. So they're going to open up this road here along the marge of St. Joseph. That's going to be opened up by Colonel Keigwin. And by the 30th, by the 28th, they're going to have the men moving into the staging areas here, because McPherson is moving southward along the same route, pioneered by General McClernand. So we can see that the situation is developing here. Now, after the war, in '67, the Mississippi will cut a new channel through here. So this is what has been Davis Bend becomes Davis Island. Now, when it changes overnight, this island is still in Mississippi. So the Mississippi Channel is here. If it accretes, the river, the boundary moves on an accretion. But on a cataclysmic change, the boundary stays in the same. So if you want to visit Jefferson Davis before the war, you'd visit here. And if you want to visit his brother Joe, you'd visit here. And of course, the wreck of the Indianola had occurred in late and early March. So you can see generally what's happening, and I'll turn it over to my two colleagues to share their remarks and about Point Clear, the Plenty Smith Plantation, where we are now.
It's hard for us to imagine here, although it is late April 2005, the very same month in which this march was being conducted by the Union Army of the Tennessee, to imagine the conditions that existed at that point in time. Here we have a beautiful, clear, sunny day, temperatures in the low 80s. Throughout much of this march south through Louisiana, it is raining, and it rains cats and dogs. Now, already the area has been inundated throughout much of the winter of 1862-1863. The soil here is saturated. Although the floodwaters of the Mississippi are receding, the ground is still saturated and extremely muddy. And anytime it rains, the rain just pools on top of the surface. So imagine, if you will, as you're marching down the west side of the Mississippi River along that very same road that we have traversed, as far as the eye can see, left and right, nothing but a vast field of mud, or when it rains, a vast sheet of water. As one soldier from Iowa wrote, as we marched south through Louisiana, we took the country with us, meaning that their feet were just caked with mud. It is backbreaking, laborious work, corduroying this road, building the bridges that were necessary. The soldiers oftentimes bivouacking in mud at night, waking up the next day just caked with mud from head to toe. That's the conditions under which these men marched south through Louisiana. Now, throughout much of this march south on the west side of the river, they are marching through country that is inhabited by people very much in support of the Confederate war effort. Most of these plantations are owned by staunch Southern sympathizers. Many of the owners have fled farther west to the Washita River and have taken their able-bodied field hands with them, but they left behind a multitude of geese, turkey, chickens, other fowl that are consumed by the Union Army. Their smokehouses are full. But many of these Southerners did not want their property being touched by the Federals, such as Judge Perkins here at Somerset Plantation. If you hold the map up there just a moment, please. Here's Judge Perkins at Somerset Plantation. He would burn his magnificent home, all of his outbuildings, and what was reputed to be over $1 million worth of cotton, just to prevent it from falling into federal hands. Farther south of here, just down the levee a short distance, was Colonel James's Ione Plantation. It's misspelled on the map here, but it's Ione Plantation. Colonel James's home was occupied by General Osterhaus and members of his staff. General McClernand headquartered there temporarily from time to time. Anyway, they liked to taunt Colonel James by raising the U.S. flag over his house, and this infuriated him to no end. He kept telling them that the Confederates were going to get even, that the Confederates were going to be victorious. Not a single Union soldier was going to survive this campaign. And on the night of April the 16th, when there's firing heard at Vicksburg, this is Porter's fleet, of course, running by the batteries at Vicksburg, tremendous lightning, or tremendous light show, if you will, can be seen from this location of the shells exploding, the glare of the fires. Suddenly, by midnight, or shortly thereafter, all was deathly quiet once again. The very next morning, the wreckage of the Henry Clay, still on fire, floats past Ione Plantation. Colonel James points to it and says, "See what I tell you, your entire fleet has been destroyed. Your army will be destroyed next." Fortunately for the colonel, just a few minutes later, the lead gunboat appeared, followed by other gunboats. It was quite obvious the bulk of the Union fleet had made it past. Colonel James was more depressed than ever.
Here at Plenty Smith's plantation, Fort Clear, is Grant will write one of his masterful messages to Sherman in a great show of understanding psychology. You have to understand that Sherman has a deep-seated hatred for reporters. They called him insane in 1861. He blames them for the failure of his bank in San Francisco in the 1855-56 time frame. He's very bitter to reporters. After Chickasaw Bayou, Thomas Knox, a reporter, will blister him in the papers about the defeat at Chickasaw Bayou. He will actually court-martial Thomas Knox. The first time and only time in military history that I can recall that a civilian reporter has ever been court-martialed. Not a bad idea, but you just don't do it. Now, Sherman will charge him as being a spy, which of course is a capital offense. John Thayer, a good lawyer, is the president of the court-martial board. Thayer knows we can't hang a reporter. But Sherman's pretty mad, so they find Thomas Knox guilty on a technicality and banish him from the army, a la Geraldo Rivera a couple of years ago. History does repeat itself. Now, Grant realizes, of course, Sherman's deep-seated hatred for reporters. Sherman has a code word he uses in his messages and letters. He calls them the people with a capital P. Grant will refer to them as the visitors in his correspondence. Now, from here at Plenty Smith Plantation, on the 16th of April, Grant will send a message. 27th of April, Grant will send a message to Sherman. Grant is preparing to cross the river, and from here, he will send a message to Sherman, and he will write, "If you think it advisable, you may make a reconnaissance of Haines Bluff, taking as much force and as many steamers as you like." He said, "But I am loath to order you to do it, because it would be so hard to make our own troops understand that only a demonstration was intended, and our people at home." Notice he uses Sherman's code word for reporters, not his own, so we'll make sure this is understood. "Our people at home would characterize it as a repulse. I therefore leave it to you whether to make such a demonstration." What he's asking for is to Sherman to create a feint or a fake attack at Vicksburg so he can cross the river, hold the Confederates in place, but he doesn't order him to do it. He says, if you think it's advisable, you can do it, but I won't order you to do it because the press is going to blister you when you go up and fall back. I don't know if you can take the pressure. That's known in Mississippi as a triple dog dare. Triple dog dare Sherman to do it. He's played on Sherman's weakness, his hatred for reporters. He's played on it. Grant will later write in his memoirs that he ordered Sherman to do it. You know the truth now, don't you? Sherman will write back, "We will make as strong a demonstration as possible. The people of the country must find out as best they can. It's none of their business." He will then write, "I will use troops that I know will trust us and not be humbugged by a repulse. The men have sense and will trust us as to the reports in the newspapers. We must scorn them, else they will ruin us and our country. They are as much enemies to good government as the secesh, and between the two, I like the secesh best. Because they are a brave, open enemy and not a set of sneaking, poking scoundrels." Sherman has swallowed the hook so far it's in his gizzard. It's a beautiful, beautiful psychological exhibition of leadership. Now here's what Sherman writes to his letter to his wife at the same time. If you ever want to know what a guy's really thinking, read his letters to his wife, as far as some things are concerned. He said, "Poor Grant had to make so many and such antic apologies that even his wife must have been mortified. For it will be quoted as one of the many pieces of evidence that he did nothing at Vicksburg and meant to do nothing. Whilst the faction of a demagogism tear our countries to pieces, even Grant is cowed and afraid of the newspapers." Sherman has taken that message to believe that Grant is afraid of the newspaper. He says, I suppose we must ask the people of the press, or some half-dozen little whippersnappers who represent the press, but are in fact spies in our camp, too lazy, too idle, and too cowardly to be soldiers. These must be consulted before I can make a simulated attack on Haynes' Bluff. I think not. He's furious. He says, but listen to this. This is intriguing. He says, but when they take Grand Gulf, they will have the elephant by the tail. I say the whole plan is hazardous in the extreme. He said, my own opinion is that this
Yeah, but if they're careful,
I haven't been up there last time. 2 times I've been there, I haven't been upstairs.
watch your step. There's ladder and glass and everything.
Yeah, let's say one. You're permitted to go upstairs.
Oh, good, good.
But careful, the ladder and glass is necessary. Lost somebody
It's got a built-in reflector.
Yeah.
going to fire you if you don't respond.
It's slow for years. Slower every year.
In Vicksburg, and 6 transports are going to cast off, and they're going to run the Vicksburg batteries, losing 1, the Tigers. Now, when these vessels run the Vicksburg batteries, they have lashed to their port and starboard beams barges loaded with hay and corn, hay and coal for the engines, hay for the equines. So that means you now have enough. You have more shipping, and now you call for Colonel Keigwin and tell him to take the 49th Indiana and 112th Ohio and a section of artillery and cavalry, and he's going to march this way, opening a road. And when he reaches here, he's going to turn on Ike Harrison and drive his men south of Choctaw Bayou. So that means Harrison will be no problem at all. McPherson has moved his men from Lake Providence to Milliken's Bend, and he is starting southward with 2 2/3 divisions. He's going to leave MacArthur's division to guard the road. He's already left Reed's division, the brigade, of MacArthur's division up at Lake Providence, to watch Lake Providence, and he's going to follow along with Logan's division and Proctor's division and move into the area of Hardtime Landing. So by this time, as we get now, what is Pemberton doing? General Pemberton is in Jackson. Good argument to be in Jackson. He's got communications with Richmond. He's got communications with Vicksburg, but he is going to be doing probably what he should be doing up till the 24th of April. He is assembling General Loring's division. He's got poor old General Bubert's men riding for the trains. almost on the afternoon of the 28th day of April. 16,000 of McClernand's men and 12,000 of McPherson's men in and around Hard Times, ready to cross the river, and the Confederates have about 5,000 men in.
It's a long distance. Grant is able to make this march with a relatively high degree of secrecy. What aids him in this movement down the west side of the river? If you fellows will flip the map just a moment, you'll note that one of the bio operations we had talked about ever so briefly earlier is the Lake Providence expedition, where a hole was blasted in the levee up here at Lake Providence, emitting floodwaters of the Mississippi into Lake Providence, then through a stream of interconnected waterways going down through Bayou Mason, leading their way eventually down to the Black River, the Red River, and into the Mississippi. It floods all these interior waterways west of where Grant's army will be operating, and thus will serve as a water barrier against Confederate forces in the vicinity of Delhi or any that can be sent to that area. So Grant's right flank is going to be protected throughout this movement down the west side of the Mississippi River by the floodwaters thanks to the Lake Providence expedition. Is thinking about the security of his supply and communications line. It is invaluable to his operations in Mississippi.
Two real quick messages that Grant sends to Halleck as he starts this march. He will send a message to Halleck, and he's learned that Halleck is a micromanager. He's learned that Halleck is a disciple of Henri Antoine Jomini. Halleck is
There, on April the 29th of 1863, the Union Army would embark on transports and barges. The invasion armada would form. On April the 29th, Grant will request of Admiral David Dixon Porter to send his ironclad gunboats once again into action to silence the Confederate batteries at Grand